Ever look at your calendar and think, why is October the 10th month, but it's called Octa, which means 8? Or why some of our government's biggest buildings look like giant glorified cookie cutters from ancient times? You can thank the Romans for that. It's super weird, right? This empire that's been destroyed for centuries, its fingerprints are still all over our world. The words we use, our government structures, our laws, even our idioms. This was the civilization that created the first professional army, founded the institution of the Senate, and ran a form of democracy for almost 5 centuries. At its absolute peak, a crazy stat: 1 in 5 people on Earth was a Roman. That's insane. So, what was their secret? How did a tiny, humble settlement on a river grow into this colossal, world-dominating superpower? And what was the secret sauce that let them last for an unbelievable 2,200 years? But more importantly, what was the ultimate, tragic flaw that led to their downfall? Because nothing, not even a 2,200-year-old empire, lasts forever. This is an epic, action-packed story about ambition, betrayal, love, and a whole lot of violence. It's a journey into the heart of a society that was both brilliant and brutal. We're going to see how their greatest strength became their biggest weakness, and how the pursuit of ultimate power is something that always destroys itself from within. The story starts with a legend, and let me tell you, it's a spicy one. The twins, Romulus and Remus, are born, but their mom, Rhea Silvia, was a virgin princess who was forced to become a priestess in the temple of the virgin goddess Vesta, all because of some palace drama. Well, a virgin princess having twins was, to put it mildly, a huge scandal, especially when she said the father was the god of war, Mars. The king was terrified and ordered the babies to be thrown into a river. But fate, as it does in all good stories, intervened. The river didn't drown them. Instead, it washed them ashore, where they were found by a wild she-wolf, Lupa. And get this, she didn't eat them. She rescued them and fed them with her own milk. Talk about an unconventional upbringing. After they grew up, they decided they wanted to build a city. Totally normal, right? But like any good sibling duo, they couldn't agree on anything. They started fighting over which hill to build the city on. The fight got so out of hand that Romulus, in a fit of rage, killed his brother Remus. That's one way to settle an argument. He then founded the city of Rome on his hill of choice, naming it after himself, on the 21st of April, 753 BCE. This act of violence for purpose, using force to get what you want, became a defining Roman characteristic. It was in their blood from day one and stayed there until the very end. With a city but no people, Romulus had a major problem. So he did something brilliant and completely bonkers at the same time. He made Rome a sanctuary for anyone and everyone. The city gates were open to criminals, fugitives, runaway slaves, you name it. If you were a misfit, Rome was your kind of place. But the population was a bit unbalanced. A total sausage fest, to be honest. There weren't enough women. So Romulus came up with a new, equally insane plan. He threw a massive celebration and invited the neighboring Sabine and Latin tribes. While the visiting men were having a wild, carefree time dancing and partying with the Romans, they had no idea they were being played. Because while they were distracted, the Roman warriors were busy abducting the young women left in their villages. Romulus's goal was simple: get healthy women to marry young Roman men, force them to have children, and grow the city's population. It was a masterclass in strategic, if unethical, thinking. The Sabines, understandably, were furious, but it took them 9 or 10 months to gather an army and march on Rome. By then, many of the abducted women had become mothers, and others were expecting. So, when the two armies were about to clash, the women, holding their babies, ran out into the middle of the battlefield. They begged their fathers and brothers to make peace, not war. They didn't want their new families to be destroyed. The plea was so powerful, it worked. The Sabines and the Romans made peace, and the Sabine people settled in Rome. This led to a massive increase in population and, more importantly, a blending of cultures. Rome became a multicultural melting pot, which made them stronger and more adaptable than any of their neighbors. They learned that sometimes tolerance and a mix of ideas were better than a fight. The birth of the Senate, and a very confusing calendar. With the city growing fast, Romulus needed to organize his new population of ex-criminals and Sabines. So, he made one member from each clan a chieftain, or patres, which literally means father. He gathered them together to give him advice, and that group was called the Senate. It was the first little flicker of democracy in Rome. They started to get organized in other ways too. The Romans counted all the tribes and their people in a census. They even counted all their gods and religions, calling them all Roman gods, even though they were originally from different tribes. They also created a calendar. They initially had a 10-month calendar and named the first month after the god Mars. We call it March now. The 8th month was Octa, which is why even in our 12-month calendar, October is still named as the 8th month. It's like a calendar with a memory problem. This organization made Rome more efficient and powerful than all the disorganized villages around them. Rome was ruled by 7 kings. And these kings were not always the best. In fact, they were pretty brutal. The 6th king, Servius, was killed in a shockingly violent plot hatched by his own daughter and her husband Tarquinius. Tarquinius pushed his father-in-law down the steps of the Senate. The old king tumbled into the street, where his daughter in a chariot came galloping and ran him over. He was left to die on the street. The road where this happened is now called the Highway of Sin because of this terrible deed. The king forced thousands of people to work in dangerous conditions, digging tunnels without oxygen and building without safety. They literally worked until they died. The people hated him, and they started to hate the very word for king, Rex, which became an insult. When the king's son Sextus committed a terrible crime, he sexually assaulted a noblewoman named Lucretia. When she resisted, Sextus threatened her, saying he would kill her and a slave and then frame them for an affair, shaming her entire family. After Sextus left, a broken Lucretia told her story to her husband, her father, and a man named Brutus. This Brutus was actually the king's nephew, but he'd been pretending to be a lazy simpleton for years to avoid being seen as a threat and getting killed by his power-hungry uncle. Brutus's name even meant lazy and stupid in ancient Latin. After telling her story, Lucretia pulled out a dagger and plunged it into her own heart. The idiot, Brutus, seeing this act of defiance, pulled the dagger from her chest and swore an oath. He would avenge Lucretia and his brother, who had also been killed by the king, and he would get rid of kings forever. Brutus, the simpleton, was done pretending. He led a massive revolt, and while the king was away on a military campaign, Brutus seized control of Rome. The king was shut out of his own city. He tried for years to get back in, but Brutus, the man he thought was a fool, had outsmarted him. Tarquinius, the arrogant, eventually died as an unknown old man in Greece. With the king gone, Rome changed forever. In 509 BCE, after 244 years of kingship, Rome became a republic. The Romans now had a deep, burning hatred for the idea of a king. The new system was a form of democracy where free Roman men elected senators, who in turn elected 2 consuls to rule for just 1 year. This was supposed to prevent any single person from becoming too powerful. The first 2 consuls, the same idiot Brutus, and Lucretia's husband, Lucius Collatinus. But this new system had a huge problem. It was a democracy, but only for the elite. Roman society was legally divided into 2 classes, the rich patricians and the poor plebeians. The patricians lived in huge palaces with hundreds of slaves, while the plebeians were crammed into single rooms with 6 to 10 people sharing a space. You couldn't be a plebeian and marry a patrician, or run a business with them, or become a senator. The plebeians had a right to vote, but their choice was always between a bunch of rich guys. They participated in electing the rulers, but they had no say in actually running the state. It was a mutual political tug-of-war of the patricians, and the poor people were just along for the ride. How did this deeply flawed democracy, born from violence and built on a foundation of social division, go on to conquer the entire Mediterranean? And why did this hatred of kings eventually fade, leading to the rise of an emperor? To find out what happened to the Roman Republic and how it all went wrong, you're not going to want to miss the next video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to catch the next part of this epic story. And let me know in the comments below, what do you think was the biggest mistake the Romans made in their early days?